But first this morning, in our first segment, we've been joined by the country's Minister of Information and Civic Education, Cherino Bar. The Minister is here to talk about the recent alleged cocaine saga involving Sierra Leone's ambassador in Guinea, among other government activities. Good morning, Mr. Minister. It's a pleasure having you as usual.
Morning, brother. Good to be here.
What do we know about this cocaine saga?
On the 13th of January, the government of Guinea officially communicated to the government of Sierra Leone. The details are as follows. On the 31st of December, 2024, Guinean authorities intercepted a Sierra Leone embassy vehicle that had traveled from Freetown with an official laissez-passer, which means an authorized travel from originally the vehicle belongs to the embassy in Guinea, but it came to Freetown. It was on its way back to the embassy. Apparently, somewhere in Conakry, the Guinean authorities intercepted this vehicle. They did a routine search. They found 7 suitcases of banned substances suspected to be cocaine. They found other electronic items and cash totaling $2,000. I've seen people peddling $100,000 online. It's false. What we have from the Guinean authorities, from our correspondents, it's about $2,000 that was in there. And there were 2 occupants of the vehicle. Local staff of the embassy, who we understand now is a Sierra Leone national, and a second individual whose identity we still cannot confirm. The Guinean authorities made clear to us that the vehicle had been impounded, the individuals had been arrested, and they were supporting Guinea with the investigations. Now, we as a government in Sierra Leone immediately responded to Guinea and said that part of what we wish to do is to immediately and urgently recall our ambassador, who is the head of the mission, and the head of Chancery, who is the administrative head of the mission, so that we can institute our own investigation on this side in Sierra Leone and ensure that we hold everybody accountable that might be connected to this. We don't know, if, for example, if the cocaine or alleged cocaine substances were taken from Sierra Leone, but we know the vehicle came from Sierra Leone. We want to understand what happened. We want to understand who they met. We want to understand what are the circumstances. So the 2 headlines from the perspective of Sierra Leone is, when we received the correspondence on the 13th, a day later, the government of Sierra Leone had communicated back to the government in Guinea, and over the course of last week, there had been several conversations between the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Timothy Musakaba, and his counterparts from Guinea to try to make sure that we're sharing information, that we're working together. What I should also state is that there's been rumors that A, the ambassador was under house arrest. That's false. And that B, the ambassador is persona non grata. There's a particular newspaper, Gleaner newspaper, that's posted a whole line of falsehoods. And I think a fact checker was reaching out to me today, and I said it's simply false. What we know is from official correspondence, and that's what I put my hand up on here when I come into the studio, is to say to the people of the Sierra Leone what the facts are and what the government of Sierra Leone is doing. So these are the factors. We know them right now. We expect the ambassador to be back in Sierra Leone during the course of this week to come. The Inspector General of Police has commenced an official investigation into the issue. I know that at the highest level of governance, His Excellency the President is concerned about this issue. Obviously, when your name of your country and cocaine are mentioned in the same sentence, that's not ideal. But what we're confident in is, again, it's not that bad things don't happen, it's how you respond when those bad things happen. And in this case, we've taken the swiftest decisions that are possible, and we're going to make sure that those who are responsible are brought fully to face the full penalty of the law.
But what do you think caused the delay? Because you mentioned on the 31st December, that was when the vehicle was impounded, and then there's a correspondence and outcomes of on the 13th of January.
That's up to the Guinean authorities. We cannot speculate. Obviously, again, it was during the holiday periods, but they might have also been going through their own investigations and their own work. So at some point, they were obliged to inform us, and that's what they have done. But the reason I mentioned the dates is to be clear on when we received the official correspondence and when we started acting on that official correspondence. Obviously, we also saw a report that our ambassador was under house arrest. That would be a violation of international law. Our ambassador is not under house arrest. And it's also important to be clear. The ambassador was not in the vehicle. The ambassador is not the the vehicle that was caught is not the official vehicle of the ambassador. This is a utility vehicle. Embassies have multiple vehicles. They have different number plates. The ambassador's vehicle is a CMD, which means it's the head of mission. The vehicle that was caught is a CD, which is a utility vehicle that was used to come to Freetown on an official mission. The reason I say that is to be clear. We're not hiding anything. I'm not saying that it was an official mission. It was sanctioned by the embassy. It was sanctioned by the folks there. That's why we've invited both the ambassador and the head of mission to understand what has happened. Now, the Guinean authorities are not sharing at this minute every detail with us, but they have 2 people in custody there. I'm sure they're going through their own investigations. And then they got to a point where they thought it was useful to reach out to us and to engage with us and to ask us for certain things in terms of what we're going to do with our ambassador and all of that. And we have said we're urgently recalling our ambassador on our team. So that's the situation.
Now, that utility vehicle is actually an extension of the state regardless.
True.
And now that we're in a situation like this, what oversight mechanisms are actually in place when it comes to either diplomatic embassies or even ministerial offices?
Look, when you are a diplomat, it's a very high position that you hold. You represent the state of Sierra Leone, you're right. It's a sacred duty, and you're bound by certain international laws and conventions and protocols. You're supposed to carry yourself with the utmost integrity. You're supposed to be above these kinds of involvements in, obviously, the awful and distasteful drug trafficking, which we know is an international crime. You're supposed to be above all of those things. We have multiple embassies around the world. This is not common practice of Sierra Leone. This is not common practice of our embassies and our ambassadors. But it's possible you can always have a rotten egg. I see somebody was sharing just information the other day about the fact that the White House in the United States, they found cocaine in the White House in the United States. This is a place of extreme high security, and the people you expect will go in there and all the security measures. It is not impossible that you're going to have a slip and somebody rotting within your midst. What is important is how you respond to that. It's how you make sure you set the example, and as you said, you make sure that the protocols that are involved. So, once we are concluded this investigation to understand how this happened, where it happened, and then we will be able to, put the necessary reforms in place or measures in place to ensure that this doesn't happen in the future. What I can assure you of is, as I've said, the Minister of Foreign Affairs himself is personally involved in this issue. He's been on the phone all the time. He's been working on this. I've been privileged to sit through some of these briefings and conversations with him. The leadership of this country, His Excellency the President, obviously he spent so much of his capital trying to reform this country and change our image internationally. For goodness sake, we sit on the International Security Council, both at the United Nations and the African Union. We have other countries coming here to learn from us and see the examples that we have set as a transformative country from conflict to a shining vehicle of not just development, but also peace and security. So these kinds of distractions are unhelpful, but I think they are also an opportunity to demonstrate that we are a mature state, as we say we are, and that we have zero tolerance. And how you're going to demonstrate is by the examples that you set. And I can assure the people of this country that we'll leave no stone unturned.
Quickly before Jones comes in, you mentioned us being in a place where internationally as well, as cited quite often during the president's visit to international countries and international platforms, is also to gain a right standing with international community for Sierra Leone. But whilst he's also busy doing that, what's in place domestically? Because I mean, we're having a scandal like this, and international media outlets as well have carried on this. But
it's important to also point out that this, again, what we know now was not found in Sierra Leone. The arrest happened in Guinea. The vehicle came from Sierra Leone, but it's also possible that it was on the way that this happened. We're not going to speculate, but the fact is that it happened in Guinea, not in Sierra Leone. The arrest happened in Guinea. We're going to investigate. If there are, look, we will always have some crime in Sierra Leone. There will always be people who are seeking to do bad things. There will always be people who are seeking to subvert the law. That's not what makes our international reputation good or bad. What makes our international reputation good or bad is how we respond to crime. It's how we make sure there's no political covering. How we make sure that we're transparent. And that's what we've done in this case. I mean, it's, we all grew up in this country. There were years and years of these kinds of episodes. We hear drip, drip, drip. The government doesn't come out in the way that we have come out. We've put everything out there. We've put our hands up. We've shared everything that Guinea authorities have shared with us. We've shared the number of suitcases that because we want to be clear to the people of this country and to the international community that we've got nothing to hide. In fact, it is in our interest to thoroughly investigate this issue and to make sure that those who are responsible are held to account. But in general, on our peace and security, on the law enforcement of this country, we just went through a successful festive period, not a single major episode of either crime, of airports, of problems and all, because the measures that we've put in place as a country are keeping the people of this country safe. People came here and enjoyed a wonderful festive season, full of many, many festivals and all of that. I'm sure you had some fun as well, and there was not a single episode, and that's because of the measures that we've taken.
Mr. Minister, the name of this country is frequently now being called or, associated with drug smuggling, drug abuse. We've been fighting Kush for like over a year now since the president declared a public emergency on drugs. Just last year in Guinea, people are being sent back, on suspicion of drug trafficking. And now we are, in the wake of this international, scandal of sorts. Do you think at some point that our country is slowly becoming a drug spot in the world?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, our country cannot be a drug spot in the world because even the way that you framed it, that it's frequently, I will take some exception to that because from your first example is the Kush crisis. Now we know that Kush is both an importation, but it's also manufactured locally. Mm-hmm. And you have drug crisis everywhere in the world, in the United States, in Europe, all across Africa. There's drug crisis, and people are going to find this isn't the first time we've had. We had Pampas, we had other things. That's a social problem, and we have addressed that robustly. We declared a state of emergency. In a drug spot, you don't declare a state of emergency because the state is complicit in it. In Sierra Leone, the president took a very decisive stance. He set up a drug protection task force headed by no less a person than the chief minister, and we've seen results. I think we can all agree that we're not where we used to be just a year ago when it came to Kush. So that tells you the country has a decisive response to these kinds of issues. On what happened in Guinea, again, it's important about the deportation of Sierra Leoneans. Guinea cleared slums where there were drug peddlers. They deported citizens from Sierra Leone, Mali, Senegal, in very similar circumstances. I don't speak for the Guinea authorities, but I know the fact. And so again, it's not like Sierra Leone was like picked on as this country that is like this drug hub. I don't want to also sound defensive. Whenever you hear that your embassy vehicle is involved in this smuggling or trafficking of these kinds of drugs, it's distasteful. It's an unfortunate development. It's something that we frown at the highest levels of the government of this country. And so on that, as I said, the question is not that bad things will not happen. The question is what you do when bad things happen. There are always going to be criminals. There are always going to be people who take, in Creole say, they almost try chance. That is normal. What happens is after they don't try chance, what do? We have the Inspector General of Police who's come out, we're doing an investigation, we've immediately swiftly called our ambassador, we have a zero tolerance policy for drugs. And again, the kind of drugs we're talking about, street value or otherwise, we don't have a market for that in Sierra Leone. So it's very difficult for Sierra Leone to become that kind of hub for these kinds of drugs. Not so long ago, actually, as well, I was on this station here where people were smuggling tablet, dangerous drug tablet that was worth millions of dollars. It was again this government of Sierra Leone that conducted a raid that we had done over a 1-year period of intelligence, disrupted that and closed their warehouse. And so it tells you the state is responding. We have a global challenge of drugs. We have a global problem of smuggling and these kinds of things. And people are going to look at the porous borders that we have and seek to use our porous borders. That's true. But I can assure you that we, under the leadership of President Julius Maada Bio, we will not allow this country to become a drug hub at all. Speaking
about the porosity of our borders, this particular vehicle had driven from Cambia, as I read,
yes,
into Guinea.
Via Cambia, not from Cambia. It came from Sierra Leone. The exact origin of the vehicle, this is now part of the investigation. We understand that it came all the way, whether it gets to Freetown, to Port Loko, or where else. But the correct information, it drove via the Cambia exit points from Sierra Leone.
Is it possible that along the way, border securities were a bit complacent, should I say, or deliberate?
I've
not
had this
to check
question.
the vehicle?
It's also important to know that diplomatic vehicles are generally not subjected to search. So you cannot really blame the border security, right? I mean, if you're a diplomat, you're driving through, you will not be subjected to the kind of search. And that's just the international protocol. And that's actually part of the UN Convention. So except you have to have really probable cause to be able to subject a vehicle of that nature to. But if it has an official laissez-passer, say it's coming on a mission that's approved by the embassy, signed by the head of chancery and all of that, you will be annoyed, or at the very least discomfited by the fact that your ambassador or your embassy vehicle is now stopping at the embassy with the CD, and they are being stopped at the border and subjected to that kind of search. That's why I said being a diplomat is a very high respect. It is globally. That's why when you have that diplomatic passport, even at the airport, you have a separate line, and those lines go very fast because there's a respect, there's a certain expectation of a certain behavior that you have to carry or conduct yourself. And obviously this has been breached in this case. That's why it's a serious issue for us.
Before Elizabeth comes in, Mr. Minister, you've said a lot, actually. I mean, you're a skilled communicator trying to massage, the issue as skillfully as possible.
I'm being as factual as I can, but I want to stick to the facts. I think people are reasonable. I think people listen to all of this, and people are reasonable. If you give people the facts, they're reasonable. They will understand that bad things do happen. Even in their own homes, your kids, you raise your best kids, you put everything you can, one of your kids is going to do something that is wrong. The question always is what you do.
Wouldn't you agree that this is a case of diplomatic privileges being abused?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Somebody has abused the diplomatic privilege. That's why the vehicles were not subjected to search on this side. Somebody has decided to use our diplomatic vehicles to smuggle contraband substances. And I can assure you that His Excellency President Julius Maada Bio, in the leadership of this government, is going to make sure that anybody who was complicit in that full chain faces the full penalty of the laws.
And who takes responsibility in this case?
The people who are responsible will be held to account. That's why we're conducting the investigations, once the investigation is clear. And that's also why, look, it's important to mention that the Ambassador Almami Bangura, he was not in the vehicle. He was not caught with any substance, but that's who we have invited, because it happened when you're the ambassador, speaking of responsibility, you have responsibility over that mission. The next person is the head of chancery, who is the administrative head of the embassy, both of whom have been invited to come back to capital so that they can respond. So in terms of responsibility, that's the beginning. But at the end of the day, all responsibility in Sierra Leone stops with the Commander-in-Chief and our Fountain of Honor, who is His Excellency President Julius Maada Bio. That's why he's taking this seriously. That's why he's giving us the go-ahead to organize that press conference, to be transparent as possible, to provide all the information that we have to the public, so the public will know that we're hiding nothing here, and that we're going to make sure that anybody who is found wanting faces the full penalty of our laws. And
what penalty is that?
I am careful on this one because I'm not a lawyer, but I know that when you breach laws, and drug trafficking is a serious international crime. If you violate diplomatic privileges in the way that my brother just mentioned, there will be consequences for that. So there will be a range of laws, and the lawyers, law officers departments. We have a new Attorney General who is highly respected internationally. He will look at the facts, and he will make sure that the laws are applied fully. That's what I can assure. But I'm not the lawyer now. I'm not going to tell you what the specific punishments are.
Now, incidents like this as well also could affect, or could have far-reaching economic consequences. How does this affect foreign aid, investments, and the likes?
I think in general, I know, again, as I've said, people are going to look at how we respond. Are we complicit? Is there cover-up? Is there some connections to us that we're trying to hide? And I believe that's not going to be the case. And I think what they're looking at, what our international partners will be looking at, is how we respond, what we do. And also the nature of the investigation that's conducted on this side. Keep in mind, we're not the only ones investigating. The Guinean authorities are investigating. So we can't really cover up everything, because Guinean authorities have 2 people in custody that they are also interviewing, and they will also be forced by the Guinean press there to also come clean and explain what is happening. So this is a multi-layered level investigation. It involves 2 different jurisdictions and countries, and who are collaborating and coordinating with each other very well on this. And I think in terms of how this affects us, I think every crisis is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to demonstrate again the maturity of our states and our judicial and legal systems, our ability to investigate this issue, and to set an example for other countries to see that if your diplomatic privileges are abused in this kind of way, what you do to restore the confidence of the international community is the important thing. And again, I'm here to assure the people of this country that His Excellency the President takes this very seriously, and he's going to make sure that the response is full and robust.
And you've also mentioned the way in which you've approached, responding to what has happened. But how do we also take steps with regards to being more proactive? I mean, there's Toku, there's the police, and we already know stories of having weak border security. How do we aim to move towards that?
That's a good question. I think with our borders, it's not just the fact that, I wouldn't say, our border security is generally weak. It's the fact that we have porous borders. Like, you can come through the main border crossing, but the border is so vast and it's so porous that people can come through, and there are various entry points, and it's close to impossible to properly man the full extent of that border. That is why you have to have collaboration on both sides. That's why intelligence sharing, that's why you have Interpol, you have Toku, you have other structures that we use to track this. And in this case, I think we're going to utilize all of those structures. On the prevention side, I think generally we sharing intelligence, making sure that the security that we have at the border, because with some of these things they need vehicles to move. Now that we should be able to manage, we should be able to track. I think when the IG was asked this question about whether they need additional equipment, the IG said that the best equipment you can use are human beings when it comes to these kinds of searches and human intelligence, and that's what he wants to invest in and continues to invest in. But I should also mention that just in the past week, government of Sierra Leone has installed over 300 CCTV closed circuit television cameras across the city. This will aid in investigations in general as well. Just last week as well, we opened the cybersecurity technology center, which will help us we now have the capability that even if you physically destroy this phone, even if you delete everything for up to 6 months, if you're under investigation, we have the capacity to be able to retrieve all of that data. We have the capacity to analyze cyber crimes and all of that. And most of these smugglings also are connected to cyber activities as well. So when we strengthen our abilities on this side, we should be able to track and prevent these kinds of things. My ministry is leading on the drafting of a data protection law. Now, that law allows us to do better at intelligence sharing, because other countries currently that are bound by both ECOWAS, AU, and EU data protection laws currently will have a difficulty in sharing certain sensitive data with us because we don't have yet a data protection regime. But before the end of this quarter, we'll have a data protection law that we'll have put in place that will complement cybersecurity law, complement the other laws that we have in the country, that strengthens our legal and other architecture to be able to prevent and respond to these kinds of crises. So I think we're doing everything that we can, from, again, CCTV cameras. So if we had those CCTV cameras in place, we will know, for example, where did this utility vehicle come in Freetown, right? Like, who did they meet? What part of the city did they go to? So that will help us to narrow the investigations. Those are steps that we're taking. These kinds of innovations are going to be implemented not just here, but also across the country eventually, including at the border side, so we can track. I know the Minister of Technology has been working on the idea of a tech city and making sure that we have technology that can help us in manning the border and tracking who comes in, who goes out, how they operate. So these are all steps that we will continue to take to enhance our security.
What assurance would you leave with the people when it comes to this investigation? Because it might be far-reaching than what we already know.
I can assure the people of Sierra Leone that no stone will be left unturned. There will be no sacred cows. His Excellency the President wants to get to the bottom of this issue, and that justice will be fully served.
Is there any timeline for the investigations and when findings will be published?
I want to be careful to not state, because some of these, again, these sometimes are complex webs. I don't want to come and say, oh, this is the timeline, but it takes a long time. I just mentioned the other drug bust that we did. It took over a year of surveillance to be able to fully uncover and disrupt that we said, you know, it had links with potentially terrorists in the Middle East, you know, when they were bringing here as a transit point. We're going to investigate. The fact of the matter is that in this case, there's already been a bust. So the Guinean authorities have two people who are going to be critical in this investigation. We need to exchange, and we have that very good relationship continuing. The minister is on the phone. I've been there, not once, not twice, with his counterparts in Guinea. We have our ambassador who will be here this week. I can assure people of that. The ambassador will be in Sierra Leone this week alongside his head of Chantry. And they will, first of all, that's the beginning of the investigation. What happened here? Who are these people? How did this happen? Until we get those facts, then we'll not be able to make a clear and definite determination on how we proceed. But we are on this matter. We'll continue to provide transparent updates to the people of this country because it's important. It affects you as well as it affects me, affects ordinary citizens. This is our country. If anybody's doing things that will make us all look bad or give us terrible headlines, it is our job to, it is in all of our interest to be able to call out those people and make sure that they are held to account.
So, Ministers, you've said this is an international embarrassment, and same could have dented our relationship with Guinea. The question is, how does Sierra Leone plan to heal from this diplomatic fracture?
Well, I don't think, as I said, the government of Sierra Leone is, you know, we continue to enjoy a good relationship with Guinea. We're still conversing with Guinea. They communicated to us, we replied. Our ambassador is on the phone with the Guinean ambassador all the time. I don't know if I refer to it as a fracture. Again, the reason you have these relationships is so that when incident like this happen, you put the relationship to test. You say, okay, let's now trigger the things we're supposed to do. And in this case, it's still working. Guinea has communicated to us, again, despite all the fake news out there that our ambassador was under arrest, they cannot do that because of the relationship that we have with them, and also because of the Vienna Convention that guides the conduct of all countries when it comes to diplomats. So I don't want to speculate about the nature of our relationship with Guinea, because I think this is showing that it's a relationship that is functional and that is sound, and we'll continue to build on it. All relationships can always get better. You know, the last time we had an unfortunate incident with the repatriation of our citizens, but as we make clear again, the Guinean government sent a very high-level delegation, including their foreign minister, to come to Sierra Leone to say, hey, we apologize, we had a misstep, you are a sister country, and let's fix it, which we have done, which we're open to doing all the time. So we'll continue to build on that goodwill and our relationship with Guinea.
How do you plan to rebuild, or the government plan to rebuild credibility, particularly among diplomats, for people who are worried at the moment?
Credibility is based on how we respond. I don't think our credibility has been tattered just yet. I think it's an opportunity that they are all looking at. If we don't respond well, then our credibility will be damaged. I think every country understands that there will be incidents. Just because they found cocaine at the White House doesn't mean the White House has no credibility. The question was how the White House investigated and found and held people to account. Just because there's a crime that's been committed doesn't mean your credibility is in tatters. I think our credibility is, is put up to a test in this case. And I think the first steps we took, we showed that. I saw many commentary from respected journalists across this country saying it's one of the most professional press conferences we've seen in terms of crisis management, because you were open, you were direct, you had nothing to hide, you had your hands up. And that's the first rule, as you know, in crisis communications, is you have to get all the facts out, you show you have nothing to hide. That's what we've done in this case. We did a press conference. In the past, it's also been a bill at this country. The government something happen, be shumu all man there, you defend information and they get in this government with President Bio's leadership, we're out the front door, we held a press conference, we invited anybody to ask all questions, we answered every question. We didn't say, oh, we cannot comment on that right now. Oh, no, that is a sensitive situation. No, this is a sensitive matter. But the people of Sierra Leone deserve to know, and we're giving them that information. That's one step. Two, is immediately recalling our ambassador, who we said will be here. 3 is the start of an official investigation. Those are the 3 things you can do at this stage. So I think from that respect, our credibility will be enhanced, because they will say, when they have an issue, they did the right thing. How we conduct this investigation, how we hold people to account, is, I think, what everybody will be paying attention to, including yourself.
If Mr. Bangura is found guilty eventually, would he be punished?
Anybody who's found guilty will be punished, and no sacred cows exist. And I don't want to refer to Mr. Bangura as an individual. He's an ambassador. He's in charge of his embassy, of course. But anyone found guilty will face the full penalty of the law. We stated that in our official press release, and we said that at the press conference. And this is because it's what was communicated by His Excellency the President.
There was another incident in December wherein our ports were actually used as well to actually smuggle cocaine, which, was intercepted again, and the UK ruled against the perpetrators. And questions have been rising as well. What's the link with Sierra Leone?
What do you mean by the link with Sierra Leone? Sorry.
Now, the operation actually included Sierra Leone. There was transport of these drugs, or the cocaine itself, to the UK. So it was traced back to Sierra Leone. Do you want to bring the people up to speed with regards to that?
I don't have any information on this particular episode that you're referring to. I've seen some news reports that somebody was either found guilty in the UK or something, and that allegedly that this was traced back to that it may have emanated from Sierra Leone. This is an allegation. I don't think that's been proven beyond reasonable doubt. But as I said, any time our country is mentioned in the same sentence as drugs, as cocaine, whatever, whether our citizens are involved, whether they're linked to our country, it's not a good thing. That's the responsibility all of us will have, because to traffic and bring these things, they seek to bribe. Drug money is dirty money, and it's money that is used to compromise systems, and they seek to now undermine our systems. The problem is, for that money, you risk undermining your reputation if you don't take the right action. What we are focused on in Sierra Leone, we cannot assure you 100% that people are not going to seek to try to smuggle drugs through Sierra Leone. We cannot give you that assurance that, somebody is not going to think of committing a crime. What we can assure you is, when we apprehend these people, they will face the full penalty of our law, that the state will not be complicit in that, and that we'll continue to put in place measures that I've outlined to ensure that we prevent, apprehend, and disrupt any such cabals that exist.
It's also not the first time we're having an incident like this, and indirectly you've also mentioned it, including the 2008, aeroplane, which contained similar substances. But what did we learn from that? I
think as a state, we continue to learn a lot of lessons on these things. That's why we have increased our security. Now, the episode in 2008 was very different. It was apparently a plane that was landed here that had been given clearance by a minister. I mean, I think they tried a lot of people that were complicit in it, including officials of the state. I think in this case, we've seen a very different kind of, because we learned that lesson, because in terms of the protocols for now landing planes here have changed, who was involved in all of those things have changed completely, so they are looking for other means. Again, there will always be bad people, and bad people will always scheme to do bad things. And they're looking for other means, and clearly again this time they're trying to use Guinea to exit because they cannot use our airports to do that. So this is also part of the lessons that we learn and the security measures that we have put in place. If they seek to use our airports, we have the means now to be able to track them, to search them, do routine checks. When you go through that airport, it has state-of-the-art equipment to be able to do these kinds of things. So those are the steps that we continue to take. I've just mentioned CCTV camera, which will help us to identify and track these individuals. I've mentioned the fact that we now have cybersecurity infrastructure we did not have in the past that would also help us to be able to track and prevent these networks and disrupt them in the past. We're increasing data protection, which will help us to share information on Interpol and others, because most of these drug traffickers are connected to multiple countries. There's no way that Sierra Leone is a destination for a massive drug racket because we don't have the economy. We can't buy $10 million worth of drugs from our market here. What is apparent is that they seek to use our country as a transit point to clean it up so that they can pass it on to other places. That's why we have to continue to be vigilant collectively. And again, I think it's an opportunity to speak to ordinary citizens. If somebody calls you, something is too good to be true, it's too good to be true. Don't be in a haste to give up for, oh, somebody's going to give you some big amount of money that you know, not just for drugs, but for other things. I think together, as a citizenry, if we're vigilant and we say we cannot allow our country to be used for these kinds of things, I think we have a better chance. That's why the IG said the best weapon we have are people.
Now, the best weapon we have are people, and with having all the security measures put in place, how effective will it be? Investigations and all of that. You've just mentioned people being one of the greatest assets. But when it comes to maybe certain findings, and you've mentioned some of these cases as well include a huge sum of cash, how effective will they be?
At the end of the day, what you have to pay attention to is the political will when you talk about effective investigations. We have a president that has zero tolerance for these kinds of things, and he is the head of the state, so he sets the pace. We have an Inspector General of Police that's spoken publicly and privately on this issue and is committed to doing this. You have to judge us by our past actions, yeah? We disrupted a major drug cartel with drugs that were worth in the tens of millions of dollars. We made it publicly. We didn't just do that. We confiscated those drugs. We had a very open event where we invited the press to watch us burn those drugs down. We did that so that we can show. That's the when you talk about effectiveness and credibility, it's when we do things like that that we enhance our credibility, that we make clear to the public that we have nothing to hide and that we will act on these things. So this was an operation that lasted over a year. It's a complex operation because these people are smart. They utilize normal settings, you know, institutions like this that have respect. That's how they come through, and they try to like hide within the layers. So to uncover them one at a time, it's a complex process. We'll continue to do that as a state. Again, it's not waterproof. We cannot 100% guarantee that people are not going to seek to do bad things. What we can guarantee is that every time we catch them, we'll bring them to justice, and we'll continue to do the things we can to enhance our security and make sure that we prevent these things from happening.
So, Mr. It's time we took some messages which have trickled into our inbox on Facebook. The first one is from Hussein Hassan. Mr. Minister, do government check drivers' criminal records, and who is responsible to recruit embassies drivers?
Hussein Hassan again. Mr. Minister, how many investigations, pardon me, Mr. Minister, how many investigations have you done before when we do not know the final outcome?
Mohammed Sanko, Mr. Minister, could you accept that government of Sierra Leone is part of this deal?
Dawda Tarawali, Mr. Minister, 5 Sierra Leoneans were recently arrested in Senegal for alleged drug smuggling. Is our nation slowly becoming a narcotics hub?
Mosdi saying, have we yet identified the other passenger or passengers in the vehicle during the stop and search operation? If there is any other person or persons in the vehicle?
Mystic Douazak, the Sierra Leone embassy vehicle that was caught in Guinea will definitely send a negative signal about the country, more so when it involves a diplomat. Sierra Leoneans are in anticipation awaiting the outcome of the investigation.
Ahmed Sanko is saying, Mr. Minister, are you aware that 5 Sierra Leoneans are arrested in Senegal, Dakar, for drug smuggling?
Suleiman Stale Kelfala Mansari, how does the CCTV camera and cyber system will help in handling the drugs issues in Sierra Leone?
Tok Alamin is saying, I strongly believe that the Guinean authorities have overstepped international protocol by searching our embassy's vehicle. This is a significant disrespect and should not be taken lightly by our government. We have always maintained a reciprocal respect for foreign diplomat missions in our country, and I expect the same treatment in return. While I condemn any involvement in illegal activity, including the transportation of illicit substance. I also want to emphasize that diplomatic protocol must be upheld. This incident will likely attract negative attention and put our government in a difficult position.
Swissman, I want to ask the minister in that if we don't have any sources of making money in Sierra Leone except drugs like cocaine, kush and marijuana, this is very bad for our peaceful country. We should use our natural resources to develop our lives. Instead of drug deal, one thing about drugs, sometimes you can successfully traffic it and sometimes you can run out of luck. It's a long message.
Hussein Hassan is saying, how can we trust the investigation process?
His friend Kamara is saying, refer him to Article 41 and 3, A, B, and C of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Issues. I think that's all from my side.
There's a lot of messages actually. We just summarize, we just to this few.
Okay. Quickly, criminal records are checked for obviously diplomatic staff, and in terms of recruitment, this is done. Drivers are low-level staff, so they are recruited at the level of the embassy in the respective countries. So, but yes, that includes the hiring process does include criminal records. But again, somebody can have a clean criminal record, and still, it's possible that they will become a criminal. People can be induced into these things, so we'll do that. How many investigations done without knowledge of final outcome? That's a good question. I can assure you on this one, we'll be very transparent, we'll provide the final outcome. I think sometimes also what happens is the public doesn't follow through. So, you know, maybe the outcome they don't like, or the outcome is reported in a way that is not as much as their interest is already weighing on a particular issue. But if President View says he's conducting an investigation, he's a man of his words, and I think that he will do that. Somebody said whether I should accept that the government of Sierra Leone is involved in this. I can categorically state that as a government, no, we're not. We're not involved in any illicit drugs. But it is possible that government officials, may have been. This is again why we've invited. But this is early stages, and the investigation is going to be conducted, and it will be robust, and it will spare nothing. So I think it's important for people to understand that. I've seen multiple references to 5 individuals in Senegal. Look, if a country becomes a drug country because ordinary citizens of that country are arrested for drugs, then every country in the world is a drug country. Because every day, Americans, Mexicans, Colombians, Kenyans, Nigerians, Ghanaians are arrested all around the world for drugs. Even here in Sierra Leone, we have had multiple arrests of all of these nationalities that have called. That doesn't make a country. Obviously, it's a concern for us. If they're citizens of Sierra Leone, we want to understand how they are involved. But ordinary people are going to do bad things. That's important. But people are going to commit crimes. The question is how you respond and who is involved. And in this case, again, even with the situation in Senegal, nobody can say, oh, now one government minister in Senam or this, that. That's not possible because this government doesn't have tolerance for these kinds of things. On the CCTV camera, as I think I've explained that already, that this will help us with all kinds of investigations, not just on drugs, but it will, you know, now we're finding out where that vehicle came from. It is easier if we had the CCTV images that say, that vehicle stopped at so point, to go at this person and stuff that, then those people will already now be subjected to investigation. But now we're going to wait until we get information and we start from scratch. So this will just help us to speed up our investigations in general. Somebody mentioned the Vienna Protocol and Guinea overstepping by searching the vehicle. It's an interesting point. I think the Director General and the Minister of Foreign Affairs addressed that issue at our press conference and said that by right, our vehicle should not be subjected to search. But you cannot complain about that now when your vehicle was searched and they found contraband substance. So you don't know, again, in extraordinary circumstances, they might have been acting on some tip-off or some intelligence. The fact of the matter is now that's not going to be what we cry about, because a vehicle was found with substances that they must not be carrying. We're going to focus on how we resolve that issue and make sure that doesn't happen in the future. Somebody said, well, is it that drugs are our only source of money in this country? Absolutely not. Obviously, we have an economy that's doing, it's been stable, it's doing very well. Not as well as obviously we want it to do, but it's doing well. It's on the up. As I've said before, it's not stationed, it's trajectory. We're headed in the right direction. We've seen inflation levels reduced drastically. We now have a price mechanism for example, imported rice into our country. We're investing big time in feed salon. We're doing the things we need to do. Right? Education, we're one of the champions for transforming education in the world. These are things that we're doing, and I think citizens, it's very easy again. You hear one headline and people to get distracted and be like, oh, we all this country about drugs, this, that. No, this is not a drugs country. This is still a very functional country that is law-abiding and with a leadership that's committed to the right things. And finally, it's about how do we trust the investigation process. It's a good question, and I think it's important. Look, I come from a place where I believe citizens should always start with skepticism of their country, and we should constantly prove to them that their skepticisms are misplaced and that they should trust us. We continue to do things to enhance trust. And I think under this president and with this leadership, we've continued to do that. So on this question of the investigation, trust, that see that what we have done so far in terms of being upfront with the information, we will continue to provide periodic updates to citizens. And again, if somebody has, I was saying to somebody else, it was in an informal conversation, somebody, more deep at this case. If you have the evidence of that, come forward. Don't just go to the public, to the police, also go public. That's our challenge. If you have the evidence that any of us is involved, evidence I say, come forward. The public deserves to know. The police deserves to know so that you can help them with the investigation. We will hide nothing. We have nothing to hide, and that's how we'll enhance and build on that trust. Thank you.
Now, not to generalize this particular incident, but doesn't this send any concern with regards, I mean, some of the privileges that, you know, diplomats actually also enjoy?
Look, this is not the first time there's been a diplomatic incident with one country. Okay? Multiple countries have had diplomatic, but the Vienna Convention exists for a reason. And it protects, again, especially it ensures that it takes into consideration even circumstances like this. So the Vienna Convention is a robust document that has stood the test of time for years. People have sought to exploit diplomatic privileges for years. For drugs, for terrorism, for all kinds of things. But the convention continues to stand, again, based on how the individual countries react and what the steps are. We're all in this together. So this is something that we'll continue to be in together, and we'll continue to work on together as a state. And we'll do everything we can, as I've said, to enhance that reputation of our country, to restore, to ensure that the states that are looking at us know that, hey, this is a responsible country. They are doing the right thing here. Bad things will happen. The question is what you do, and that's the message.
So, Minister, lastly, are there any words of assurance to particularly, not necessarily citizens, but members of the public who would be worried about this incident?
My parting words are this. His Excellency President Julius Maada Bio has put so much on the line to build a reputation of his country. He fought hard to get us into the Security Council. He has done amazing things around the world. He's recognized as a champion, not just for education, for gender equality. That's the reputation of Sierra Leone that he wants to build. And so he understands more than anyone that anybody who seeks to do anything that risks sullying the reputation of this country is not part of his good, is not supporting his agenda. And so, as far as this particular issue is concerned, the assurance we want to give to the people of this country, to the public, is that the states will conduct a robust investigation. Everyone involved will be held to account fully by and they will face the full force of the law. We will be transparent, will be open, will provide the facts to the public. We'll continue to come here and speak to you and others as well in the further states. And we'll do everything we can as well to ensure that we build the protection and the prevention mechanism so that our country doesn't become a safe harbor for those who seek to exploit us for their own selfish reasons. That is the assurance that we can provide. And
before you leave us as well, what goodwill message are you leaving with us? I want to put this in context for two particular countries, who have been in the spotlight, quite recently, starting off with Of course, Ghana, who just had their new president, and in his promise for the first 120 days as well, he's listed a lot of other things he wants to achieve, well, as it is the norm among our leaders around here. But also notably, he's been able to, you know, wipe away or slash down 7 ministries since he came. He made 30, there's now a total of 23. Also Burkina Faso, which has been in the spotlight, you know, for even rejecting, I think, foreign aid, putting a ban to, you know, the wig, the colonial wig and gown in its judiciary, and of course stopping a lot of exporting out of the country. In our case in Sierra Leone, what are you leaving us with that we are hopeful for, especially in the new year? What are we celebrating?
President Bio has said this is going to be a year of bold action. I think it's important when you pick out these examples from these countries to know that the contexts are different. What we're very proud of, what we can say, for example, to those countries, we eliminated the death penalty. We have tripled the percentages of women in our cabinet, in our parliament. We have young, dynamic ministers who are across our government. The average age of our government has been shrunk remarkably. We have a young cabinet. About 10 of the 30 cabinet members at the time of appointment were either 40 or below. It's all revolutionary stuff that President Bio has done. In terms of education, we are the highest spenders on education per capita than any country in Africa, one of the highest in the world. President Bio is recognized globally as a champion for transforming education. If you woke any citizen up 10 years ago and said, what do you think you need to do? What's the most transformative investment you need to do to change this country? We will all say, what is it? Education. President Bio has done that. He spends 22% of his budget on education. And even in this new term, he has said and has continued to spend that. And now he's moved to feed Salon, which is the foundation of all development. So in terms of bold, transformative leadership, President Bio does not take lessons from anyone. In fact, he is the gold standard on transformative leadership in the continent, and that's what he will continue to do.
All right. Thank you very much,
The good thing is that both of you are adorned in the same color this morning. So.
Oh, we planned it.
It looks like exactly. However, thank you for joining us this morning. It's been a great session.